From the crispy, cool pines of southern New Jersey, this is Far Out Radio. I'm Scott Teeters, and today is Wednesday. It's August the 14th, 2013. Hope you had a nice day, and it was indeed crispy cool here in the Jersey pines. It didn't get out of the 60s today. I thought maybe I'd fallen asleep and it was suddenly October, but no, it's still August, and don't worry, it'll warm up again real soon. Certified hypnotist Jim Ramey is back with us for another visit. Jim was on the program back on July the 25th, 2013, and he was here with us to share his hypnosis technique called ultra-depth process. Jim Ramey's teacher, Walter Secord, discovered the technique in the mid-60s. Secord had many students, but Jim was one of his closest and took the ultra-depth technique to the next level. And you can listen to Jim Ramey's first visit here on Far Out Radio by going to faroutradio.com. Look at the top of the right sidebar for the search box and just type in Jim Ramey, R-A-M-E-Y. Hit the go button and you'll find the post, and then you can listen to that program. In Jim's first visit, we focused on the history of hypnosis, Jim's hypnosis teacher, Walter Secord, and the basics of how Jim practices his ultra-depth process. Tonight, Jim will explain to us the highly unusual Z state. When a subject is in the Z state, verbal communication and interaction is possible with one or more of the subject's past life personalities. Jim Ramey has been in the field of hypnosis since the early 70s and offers online courses and mini-courses, live training, and workshops. And, of course, the workshop info can be found at his website, ultradepth.com. This will be a very interesting conversation. Hi, Jim. Welcome back to the program.
Hey, Scott. How you doing?
I'm good. Pretty good. Enjoying the crispy, cool weather, actually.
Oh, so am I. Love it.
Yeah. It seems weird, though, because it's still the middle of August, and it's supposed to be hot and humid here. But anyway, we'll take it.
It should be October.
Really. Jim, for our listeners that might have missed your first visit with us a few weeks ago, briefly share with us how you became interested in hypnosis and share with us your relationship with Walt Secord.
Well, my interest, was when I was very young, because I used to see this little hypno disc advertised on the back of comic books, and I always wanted one. And it was my psych professor who actually sent me to Walter Secord. He was my psych professor's teacher also for hypnosis. And, it was just like, I don't know, it was an incredible journey studying with him. And how he got me interested was, of course, had me do something for someone, which we talked about in the last time I was on. Mm-hmm. And that really, once I saw the results from this simple little technique he had me doing with this person, that really woke me up. And then over the years, of course, helping people to have major surgeries without any chemical anesthesia and never experiencing any pain. And then finally, me going through it myself, that really woke me up. And, of course, that's been quite some time now.
Well, as long as I've known you, and I met you in 1978, you've been very passionate about hypnosis. When did this passion for hypnosis begin for you? I mean, year-wise. I mean, had you been into it a long time by 78 when I first met you?
About 2 years.
Okay.
2 years, because, a lot of it I didn't like to talk about some of the things I was doing because I was doing things that most professionals would say, that is not your area of expertise. But, I helped an epileptic to no longer have grand mal seizures, to have no seizures and get off phenobarb, dilanthium, and lithium. Mm-hmm. It took a year, but it happened. It worked. And that was when I said, okay, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. But I never took it as serious as it was until I helped a woman have a liver transplant when I was in Florida without any chemical anesthesia. And after that, that's when I said, that's it. I don't want to do anything else but this the rest of my life because this is very important. And then, of course, when I had my own personal experience, that just topped the cake.
Right. How in the world was this gal able to convince her doctor to do liver surgery without anesthesia?
Well, this person who was close to her 70s, the doctor told her she would have to do it in a waking state because they couldn't give her any chemical anesthesia. It would take her life instantly. Her liver was that bad. And so they were very open to what was going to happen. As far as they knew, all she was going to do is relax, because that's what I told her to tell them, that she has to relax first, just to use the word relax or relaxation, not to use the word hypnosis or hypnotism or anything like that. And so they were very open to it, and she did. She did exactly as I taught her, and it worked extremely well for her, which really did blow me away, because that was the most serious of all the cases I had up to that point.
Oh, yeah. That's totally invasive surgery.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That
and
takes...
since then, it's been just, one thing after another with people. And they hear about me, they come to me, and once I get them to where I need them to be, then the rest is easy, and then they can do it on their own. They can do it the rest of their lives, They don't need me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I prefer it to be that way. Let me help you to learn how to use the tool for yourself. You don't need me then. Now you can use it for anything.
Yeah, that's part of what you've always been about, Jim. And one of the things that I always admired about you is that you were very much of a promoter of people becoming self-reliant and empowered.
Well, to me, that's the way we all should work our professions, because it's not about us. It's about the person that we're trying to help. And the only way we can help them is to help to empower them so they can take control of their lives again. We should not be controlling other people's lives. To me, now, that's mind control. And that's not what I'm about or have ever been about. That's not what Mr. Secourt and others, really etched into me.
Well, hearing you say that, it's like it's this echo from the past. I remember hearing you say to people, even when we weren't talking about, actually back then, and we were doing the alpha transfer stuff, it was all psychic development work, and we only talked a little bit about the hypnosis. But one of the things I remember hearing over and over again was, you know what to do. You don't need me anymore. Go do what I told you to do. And people go, oh, okay.
Well, that's the way Walt was, with everybody that he worked with, and he really drummed that into me, that they should not be dependent upon you. Don't ever allow that to happen. Teach them to be self-reliant, to be able to do things on their own. Teach them the tools. So, I listened to my mentor because he was doing a lot longer than I was. And I find, over the years, a lot of people aren't taught that. They're taught to bring the person back. You do it for them. No, that's ridiculous. That's not helping anyone. It's an old model, and I don't like that model. It's just, who wants to go to a therapist for 5 years and then find out you're still the same way you were when you started? What a waste of time, money, effort, everything.
Who wants to do that? A lot of people want to do that because that's what they do.
Yeah, unfortunately. I limit people. If I can't help them by the 10th session, I refer them out to someone else. And I've referred very few people, very few.
I know I probably...
listen and follow and do the homework I have them do, it's like magic.
I know I probably shared this with you a long, long time ago, and you probably don't remember it, but the very first time I ever witnessed a hypnotist doing his work, my parents used to be members of the Lions Club. And it was an interesting, nice group of people, and, technically, or the overarching purpose for the Lions Club is to raise money for eyeglasses. It always seemed to me like a good excuse to get together once a month at Compton's Log Cabin for a steak dinner and do some drinking, and then about every 2 months they'd have dinner dance parties. It seemed like a party group to me. But anyway, what they would oftentimes do for these monthly Lions Club meetings, because they can be really boring, going over the minutes, and the treasurer gets up and drones on about how much money they have and blah, blah, blah. They would always try to bring in a speaker or somebody to kind of, make it a little bit entertaining. And one night I went with my dad, and they had a hypnotist. Well, I had seen several of these Lions Club fellows, and this guy had a couple. He was a typical stage hypnotist, and he had a couple fellows come up on the stage, and they sat on chairs, and he put them under, and their heads were down, and within a few minutes, he had a couple of these guys clucking like chickens, and just doing silly stuff, and I had seen some of these guys before, and I was just astounded because I thought, Mr. Miller would never do something like that. But that was my first exposure in person to hypnotists. Aside from the Mickey Mouse cartoons with Uncle Duck saying "Watch to watch," that was about it. That was about it until I met you, and then I met Mr. Secourt one time, and totally changed my perspective on that. Jim, we have some music playing in the background, so we're going to take our break. We're talking with hypnotist Jim Ramey tonight, and we're going to get into something called the Z state on the other side of the break. This is very far out, and you can check out Jim's work at ultradepth.com, and we'll be right back. Hey, we are back, and if you're just joining us, hypnotist Jim Ramey is with us this evening. He's a man with nearly 40 years' experience in his field, and we're talking about hypnotism and Jim's ultra-depth technique of hypnosis. And you can keep up with Jim's essays and his classes at his workshop, his website, ultradepth.com. Jim, it's been great to reconnect with you, and it's brought back a flood of very, very nice memories of you and your family and the Alpha Transfer folks. And I was remembering first time I met you, I went over to your apartment to meet with you, and your psychic pal Tony was there with you, and we were talking about this, that, and the other thing, and you leaned over to me and you said, "Have you ever listened to the Moody Blues?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got all their albums." And you looked at Tony and said, "He's been listening." And I thought, what am I into here? But you guys were all great. You really were.
Some very wonderful times. Very significant about the Moody Blues.
Absolutely.
They have, a lot of people don't know this, but they have tones in their music that are what are considered hypnoidal tones. They can create, if the person relaxes and listens, it will take you into a state of hypnosis. It used to take me into a very profound state, which I didn't know that works that way until, of course, I got very educated in. Mm-hmm. And today, their last album, December, the song December, that actually has the tone in it.
Really?
Yep. And then when, of course, I saw them live in Asheville, North Carolina, a couple of years back. And live, it's an incredible experience if you're familiar with these things. Yeah. And I had an enjoyable experience. It's not too often I get to be the recipient of that. I'm always helping someone else. And when I can enjoy it, it's nice for me.
Yeah, I understand. There's plenty of Moody Blues stuff out there on YouTube and Justin Hayworth stuff. And if you're ever in the mood for a Moody Blues night, there's plenty of that material. I do that from time to time. Within your method of hypnosis, you found 3 different levels beyond the somnambulism level. But before we get into them, just for our listeners that might not be familiar with hypnosis, briefly explain to our listeners, what the somnambulism state is.
Well, somnambulism is where you can get what's called negative and positive hallucinations. They can be verbal, sound or audio. They can be visual hallucinations, and you have to be at this particular level to be able to produce these things or achieve these things. This is how we test to find out where the person is. And you have to know, certain order of things in order to make all this, happen for the person. Once that happens and they're there, okay, this is the first working level of hypnosis, somnambulism. Anything before that, nothing really locked in. And then, of course, this is what most hypnotists work to achieve, and a lot of them think that's the deepest state, or the deepest, whatever you want to call it, the most profound state. But no, there are other states beyond that, much more profound and with greater effect. Are they deeper than somnambulism? Not really. Namibialism is the deepest state. So once you get there, then it's like going down a corridor and opening different doors. And the effects are more profound.
Okay. Before we get into these three profound states, how did you discover them?
Well, I didn't discover them. Mr. Secord taught all of us how to get someone to the next level, which back then was called the coma state. And I didn't like that. That was just, because of the movie Coma. It had, to me, just those terms has a lot of negative connotations. So as I started studying who discovered all this, which was Dr. James Esdale, then I said, we need to call this the Esdale state. Okay. Now it's not threatening. Now it's not scary. So that's where that came up. And then, of course, Walter Secord, he discovered what he called the ultra depth. And when he passed to protect his honor and the work and everything, his daughter asked me to do this. I said, yes, I would. I went to an IT attorney, and we talked, and what we did, we changed things around. We now call the ultra depth the Secord state. And the whole process to get someone there is the ultra depth process. And then listening to Mr. Secord, what he was teaching me about regression and what we needed to have, that's when I discovered this other state, if you want to call it, this other effect. And I get things that most other hypnotists don't get because the way I do things, I do this reverse staging, as I call it, to have this person achieve this state. And it's a different type of regression. Most hypnotists, when they regress someone, that regressed person has their eyes closed all throughout the whole thing. And since I'm also took training and, a lot of education in NLP, to me, I need to see that person's eyes. I need to see what's going on. Because, like they say, the eyes are the windows to the soul. You can tell when there's truth. And other things. You can tell emotional things that are going to happen before they actually take place. And this is when I ran across this thing, because the way I worded it, I found that I can have a person in the state. I can have them open their eyes, and the present personality instantly is gone, and the personality from the past is now present. Now, I don't take people to different time periods because I don't know if they had a life in a certain time frame. I just have them go back to another time and place that they had lived before.
This is the Z state we're speaking of.
And this is when those eyes open. This is when I say they're in the Z state.
Okay, where'd the word Z?
The epitome of regression.
Okay, where did Z come from?
To me, it was something they were saying in the UK when I was over there. They were always saying A to Z, A to Z. So one day I said, that's what we'll call it. It's the Z state.
Oh, right. They say Z. They say Z. Right.
Z.
I listen to
they don't use that word.
That drives me nuts.
Nope.
There's a car guy that does a car show, and when he talks about the Z06 Corvette, he always refers to it as the Z06. And I always think, what is this guy talking about? Okay.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Yeah, British thing. It's a British thing.
Yeah, it's a British thing. All right. Well, we threw them out of here. We say Z over here. But anyway, we won't beat them up too much for that. We've got music playing in the background, Jim, so we're going to take our break. Jim Ramey's with us tonight. We're talking about hypnotism and his ultra-depth technique, and we'll be right back after the commercial break. Okay, we are back, and we're spending some time this evening with Jim Ramey. Jim's got nearly 40 years of experience in the field of hypnosis, and we're talking about his ultra-depth technique of hypnosis. Okay, Jim, let's see here. We were just covering the Z state. Why don't you share with us some of your experiences, your early experiences when you sort of drifted into this? It must have been a little surprising.
Well, yes, it was, because I really didn't want to do regression because I didn't believe in them, because all I was seeing all the other hypnotists doing were what I referred to as dream piloting, or leading the subject. telling them, okay, now we're going to go back to a time in the early 1800s. That's creating false memory. So I didn't believe that regression was possible, even though I had a different understanding. I just didn't know how it was done until my colleague, Christina, who was my colleague in Florida for a good number of years, begged me to work with her. So finally I did. But I wanted to do it with the elements that Walter Secord said should be there if you have a real regression. And that is, they should be able to open their eyes and see. They should, if they, the life that they are experiencing is from a different country, they probably will speak in that language. And you probably won't understand because the dialects have changed so much over the years. And if it goes far back enough, if someone says, oh, well, in the regression, I see this is something or other, BC, well, this is not possible because BC was never, even known about until, what was the year 900 or something?
Somewhere around there.
Terms were, that were brought up. So these are things that, I did not want, I was looking for. Plus, he said, even if they speak in another language, they should understand you. And he says, then if they do speak in another language, there should be a way you can get a translation. He said, now I've never seen that. I've never seen anyone do that. And then he wouldn't go any further with it. And he left it up to us to figure things out. So, of course, these were the elements that had to be there. So I had to figure out how to get them there. And I wanted this to be real for her. And it just came out of my mouth the way it all even works today, still works today. It just flowed from me as if I knew it all along. Now, I didn't know where it was coming from. Now I understand, years later, my own subconscious was putting the words there so that I would learn the process. And it's amazing what happens.
This business about old languages and past dialects is more profound than people realize. It was somewhere in the last year or so, I was watching a presentation where the actors were reading the written words of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. And even though it was all English and you could understand it, you really had to bend your ear and focus to pay attention to the ways that they expressed ideas. You're familiar with all the words, but just the ways in which they were expressing it were not easy to wrap your mind around. And that's in English. I can't imagine dialects from, way before in another language.
Oh, yeah. It's just amazing. I got a chance to video this, a particular event. And I had a professional linguist watch it. And he was so amazed. And he kept asking me, how did you do that? I said, I didn't do anything. I said, she's doing it. He kept saying, well, how do you do that? I said, I'm not doing it. She's doing it. Well, what do you say to them? I said, you won't believe me if I told you. I said, besides, you have to take a lot of training in order to understand this. It's not like you take, a weekend course and now you can do this. It takes a lot because this is not what is normally taught. I said, and I took a real big chance on doing this with her because I didn't believe. It took a lot for me to finally accept it as fact and that it was real and it really did take place. And what happened, she had called me, the personality that came up, called me a certain name from a certain time period. Apparently, that personality and I lived together in another lifetime. I meaning one of my past personalities. Well, years later, in another state, with the person who did not know Christina or myself and did not know the history behind this, she was what I call staged all the way down or conditioned all the way down to the Secord state, and I just happened to ask her, I had this feeling, and I asked her if she would mind if I would, work with her for a moment, and I used, and I could use her keywords, so I did. And as I was going through the process, out of nowhere, her voice changes and says, and calls me by the name that Christina had told me many years before. And I was shocked because to me there was proof. And then this happened a third time, and this was up in Michigan now, where this third time happened. So this was blowing me away. Here's the same name again that someone's called me. It's not an American name, so it's kind of odd that it was the identical thing. So that convinced me because all three of them went into the same time period. So to me, hey, that's enough proof. 3 times is a charm, as they say. So
Right.
There was proof to me. Dale was convinced the technique worked. It's real. It was real all along. And I said, well, I have to rethink now what I, had felt about this in the past. I know how to teach this because of what I went through. So I did. I put the material together, the wording I used and everything, and created this course for people who want to understand the whole thing. It's part of the entire process now because there's a lot of things you can do with this to help people. Not only can you get information that you won't find in history books, you'll find a lot of proof, though, because of being able to duplicate this with other people, and then when it happens for them where they get the exact same information, well, there's proof to them. As they say, an experience, is more powerful than something that is written down.
That's for sure. We got our music playing, so we're going to take a break soon. But briefly, how long does it take when you start someone with a session to get them into this Z state?
Everybody's different. Some people go there almost instantly. Others, it takes session after session. How many? Everybody's different, and that's the truth. Everybody is different. Nothing is etched in stone here, so you have to learn to be very flexible.
And patient. Wow. We're learning a lot about hypnosis here this evening, and we're going to take our break. Jim Ramey's with us here. He's got almost 40 years of experience in the field of hypnosis, and I'd say he knows what he's talking about. And you can keep up with his work at ultradepth.com, and we'll be right back. Business now for nearly 40 years, and you can keep up with all Jim's work at ultradepth.com. He also offers online courses and as well as in-person workshops, and you can always call him up, email him off his website for a consult. Jim, I am certain that with the material that's up there on your website, you must get a lot of people contacting you saying, I want to know who I was. Is that the case?
Well, not so much. You know what I get mostly?
Oftentimes?
People who want to learn how to do what I do so they can help other people.
I see.
That's what I get mostly. Like right now, I'm sitting at my computer and I'm writing to one of my students who had a lot of questions, and I like to take the time and help them. And if I can't do it through an email, then we go on to Skype or even telephone if I have to. I want to help them to be able to help others, I don't like to leave anyone in the dark. And it's very important to me that they learn as much as they can from me. And I tell them all, mentorship is this way. As long as I'm alive, I'm your mentor. I don't care how many years go by, I'm your mentor. When I pass, I expect you to do that to your students or to people that you work with. Because that's the way it was done for me. Walt was my mentor all the way up to the very end. Mm-hmm. And, my experience with him passing proved it to me, especially what happened the night that he actually passed. So I know that life goes on beyond this realm and that, science tells us this. They say energy cannot be destroyed nor created. It's only changed state. So, we do this. And I really believe that from my own personal experience, I know from my personal experience that this is fact. We do not die. The body stops. And it's just like if the car stops. Do you stop? No, you get out. And if your car is dead, the engine's dead, transmission shot, you buy another one. And to me, that's the symbol of what we go through. And hypnosis is a good tool to get the information about this. Because the information, if I can get it, others can get it. I'm not the only one privy to it. You just have to learn what you have to do in order to achieve this information. But
You've probably done hundreds of these sessions. Does anything come to mind that just really blew your doors off?
Well, yeah.
Anything you care to share?
It's hard to talk about because it's so personal. The one was where, the first time I did this with Christina, and the personality that came up was something that I didn't even know anything about until this all happened. And it happened to be an Atlantean personality, and she was not speaking English at all. And I was asking her some questions, and she was answering me. So I said, now close your eyes, let your body relax. I'm thinking, how can I get her to speak English? Without saying, when I have you open your eyes, I want you to speak English. And I'm thinking, because if I ask her to do that, she'll probably speak with a British accent. That's not what I want. How do I say it? What words? Because Walt said you can't interfere. So how do I do it without interfering? And it came to my mind, these words. When I have you open your eyes, you will speak in the language of the present one. Now open your eyes. And this time, I asked the same questions, and I was watching her body gestures. They were identical, but this time she's speaking in English, and I can understand her. So then I said, now close your eyes, let your body relax. And I said, next time I have you open your eyes, you'll speak in the language of the personality of that time and place. Now open your eyes. And I asked the same questions, and now I couldn't understand her, but the body gestures were the same again. And I did this several times, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, is this real? Is this really real? Well, I went ahead a little bit later because I wanted to do this with my wife. You know who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And because she didn't believe me. And she allowed me to do, she says, okay, go ahead, do it. And of course, I used her keywords and things. It all worked. And I did this, what I call the reverse stage, and regressed her back. And I don't know why, but the year of 1979. If you recall, 1979 was when my daughter was born.
Yeah.
And my wife, my regressed wife, with her eyes open, had her open her eyes and everything, it didn't look like there was any change, like anything happened until all of a sudden, now we're living in Florida, all of a sudden she says, Florida, I hate Florida, I'll never move there. I said, there? What do you mean there? I said, we are here. She goes, no, we're not, we're right here. I said, yeah, we're here in Florida. She said, no, we're right here. I said, and then where's here? And she said, the whole entire address back there in Lindenwold, rattled the whole thing off, and I sat there just amazed because she didn't maintain those kind of memories normally. We had her phone number changed, and already that quickly she forgot the old one. So I couldn't figure out that, what, is this for real? And I finally remembered something because I asked her, well, what are we doing? And she said, well, we're meditating. I said, for what? She said, the name for the baby. And of course, in 1979, she told me, that we were in the kitchen area meditating on a name. And I said to her, we did have a baby. We had a little girl. She's going, a girl. And I'm watching my wife, and she's rubbing air where her belly would bend if she was pregnant. Just rubbing the space, but not actually touching herself. And I was watching this going on, and this was quite amazing to me. And, because she didn't look like she was regressed, but yet she's talking about we're still living in New Jersey. Well, actually, we're in Florida. Finally, I said something to her. Yes, we did have a little girl, and we named her Desiree. And she says, Desiree, that's what we shall call her, Desiree. And that freaked me out because in New Jersey in 1979, that's exactly what we were doing. And she brought me out of the meditation because I heard her saying verbally, Desiree. That's what we shall call her, Desiree. And I came up out of the meditation, 1979, and said, what? What did you say? She said, Desiree. That's what we shall call her. I went, oh, yeah, Desiree, like the Neil Diamond song. I like that. Now here we are in the 90s, and this is going on, and I'm thinking back to that and going, oh, my God, that's what really happened. How could this be? So my question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, did the event in 1979, or did this event down there take place? Which one influenced the other with this information? It was quite unique to me. That one, the way things led, that was it. Because to me, it seemed like my daughter's name got named from the future somehow. The timeline somehow merged, and information went back and forth. Since then, I played around with things in different periods, and I believe very much in quantum physics now because I know we can affect other time frames, other time periods to a small degree, but it can really come out with very large effects on the other end. Because what I said to my wife at the time last was, do me a favor. You must promise me that no matter what, you must keep me on my path. Promise me that. She said, I will. I had her close her eyes, brought her back to the present. She did not remember any of the regression, even though I suggested recall. She didn't even think it happened. She didn't know any of it.
How about that?
So that really, astounded me. And I do find that some of these people who go through this process and reach the Z state, and you do regression with them, most of them don't remember it. When they come up, and if you haven't recorded it somehow so they can see it, there's nothing there. They have no recall. In the lighter state of what I call the Z state, if you don't do it right, they will have some recall. But if it's done right and they're fully in personality, they don't have any recall. They don't know what happened.
When you record these sessions and then you play it back for people, are they shocked and surprised?
Shocked. Most of them, they just don't know how it could be.
Huh.
One of my colleagues, Ralph Alaco, he's done it. And the person didn't believe it, and he showed the video, and she was totally blown away. Could not believe that this was actually what transpired, because there's no memory of it, nothing. It's quite amazing.
I'm curious, last question for you, Jim, because we're just about out of time. Has anyone taken you into the Z state?
I spontaneously went there once.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of scary, and I had some awareness, but didn't have everything, but I had some awareness. That's why it was so scary, because I'm the operator. How could this happen? But
right.
It does. It does.
I went through a period where I was very curious about past lives and considered, finding someone that does past life regression. And I got to a point where I said to myself, I got enough to deal with my own little traumas and issues for this life. I really don't think I want to go back and look around to find some other stuff to deal with. So I just let it go and moved on to some other things.
If it doesn't, reach your fancy, don't bother. But if it's something you want to explore, you don't have to see bad things. You don't have to experience the negative things. We have
I'll
two
tell you what, buddy, if I get
libraries.
the itch to do this, I'll get in touch with you, all right?
Okay, will do.
Jim, thank you very much for the hour of your time this evening. I much appreciate it, and it's always good to talk with you.
Hey, same here, Scott. You take care.
Take care and be well, buddy. And for our listeners, you can keep up with Jim Ramey's work at ultradepth.com, and you can keep up with our work here at Far Out Radio by going to faroutradio.com. All of our programs are archived, and they're accessible anytime you like. It is talk radio on demand, and you can have at it. Just go to Far Out Radio. Up at the top, there's a search box, and everything is categorized. So go forth and enjoy. We'll be right back in a few minutes with more Far Out Radio.